Hi everybody, it's Keren here from tuppencecolored.co.uk and thank you very much for joining me today. This is what I've been making today. As you can see, it's a birthday card. Well, actually, it's a card front which I can apply to the front of a greeting card at a later date if I so choose. But the project today, it's really all about the background. This kind of effect is called Joseph's coat, and it's quite straightforward to do, and if you stay with me I will show you how I did it. These are the things that I'm going to be using today. Now, because I'm just making a card front, not the full card, I've just got a piece of Emerald Envy which is 5 3/4 by 4 inches, and I'm going to be working on some Whisper White, and that is 5 1/2 by 3 3/4. I'm going to use the Falling Flowers stamps, and I've got Melon Mambo, Daffodil Delight and Tempting Turquoise, and also Dapper Denim. I'm right out of my comfort zone today with those colours. I have my Versamark and clear embossing powder, and I've got a piece of the Emerald Envy crinkled or crushed, can't remember which it is, but it's seam binding ribbon and it is absolutely lush. Got my piece of Whisper White and I've protected my work surface. I've got my Melon Mambo, Tempting Turquoise and Daffodil Delight inks. I'm wearing gloves, not because there's anything in the ink that's going to hurt my hands, but because I just don't want to get ink all over my fingers. So I'm going to start with the Daffodil Delight, and I'm just going to put some patches here and there. Okay, just a few of them. Right, and now I'm going to get the Melon Mambo, and where I overlap with the Daffodil Delight, a bit more Daffodil Delight there. I'm going to get kind of orangey colour, which is rather cool. Okay. And I'm just splodging them on. So let's have a bit of Tempting Turquoise over in this corner. And again, where the colours mix, I'm getting green. Okay, now, and if I put it over the Melon Mambo, I get purple. So I'm just going to have a play. I'm reasonably happy with that. I think I want a bit more yellow here. I'll strengthen that colour a bit. Yep. So now I'm going to take my heat gun, and this is a 2-speed heat gun, so I'm going to put it on speed 1, and I'm just going to dry that off a little bit. And the reason why I did that is because I'm going to be moving straight on to the next step. If I had time to leave it dry, then, you know, yeah, I could do that. My stamps are all mounted up on their blocks. I've got my Versamark ink, I've got clear embossing powder, and I'm going to start stamping onto my piece of card. But before I do anything, I've got my embossing buddy, and I'm just going to give that a nice dusting, just to try and make sure that I don't get specks of embossing powder sticking where I don't want them. So now I'm going to do some stamping onto the card. That's about as much stamping as I think I want. So I've got my clear embossing powder, And I'm just going to sprinkle that over the entire surface. Okay, make sure I've got a good coat everywhere I want it. And a bit on that corner there. Yeah, I think that's about right. Certainly put that back in the pot. This is a great thing about embossing powder. You think you're using tons, but you're actually using very, very little. Now I can see a space here where I pressed a little bit hard when I was stamping. So yeah, right, so now I'm going to heat this up. Now you probably realise that this is not the piece of card that you were just looking at, and the reason for that is that when I started to put the dark colour over the top, which I'm going to do in just a few minutes, I found I had too many places where the embossing powder had gone on to the back of the card where I didn't want it, and I hadn't noticed it because I was rushing rushing to get through the filming, and it was just a bit of a mess actually. And in redoing it, I also stamped one kind of flower first, heat embossed that, then did my next pattern, heat embossed that, then did my next one, and so on, right? So I took a lot more time with it, and I made sure that I went over with my embossing buddy every time I was starting to stamp again. So what I showed you is, in principle, the way to do it, but honestly, if you want a good result, take more time over it. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to my next step, which is going to be to apply a coat of early espresso all over those gorgeous background colours. So I protected my work surface, got my gloves on, I'm good to go. Working on your card, adding more and more of your dark background colour, which in my case is early espresso, and just keep going over it and over it and over it until the background is as dark as you'd like it, which for me is here. And the next thing I'm going to do, I've got a piece of paper towel, or soft cloth would do equally well. I'm just going to move my ink pad out of the way, and I'm just going to buff over the top of my card, and as you can see, I'm taking off the early espresso ink because the embossing powder resists it. I'm just going to rub that away, and that's the final result. So all I have to do now is to assemble my card, and so I've got my my crinkly seam binding ribbon here, and I'm going to lay that across the bottom part, and I have got my ribbon scissors today because I usually forget to get them out. So I'm just going to cut that so that it is long enough to go around the front, and with this piece that I've chopped off, I'm just going to tie a knot. Okay, so that it looks like it's two pieces of ribbon that have been joined together, and it is two pieces of ribbon that have been joined together, but not in the way that you think. Sneaky, eh? So which way around do I want it? Yeah, I want it that way around. Alright, so I'm going to decide whereabouts on my card I want this. Now I want this towards the bottom because I've die cut this sentiment, happy birthday, and I'm going to put that in the top part of the card, because when it was just the ribbon, it looked a little bit bare and forlorn. So this is just some ordinary sticky tape, nothing special, and I'm just going to flip that over to where I want it and just tape it down, and then doing my best to get the other side equal. Oops. Got a message on my phone. Yeah, see, that was too high, so that's coming off. And we'll have another piece. Oh yes, we will. Okay. And yes, okay, I did tear the back of the card a bit, but the important thing to remember is that it is the back of the card. So no one's going to see that. Right, I'll bring that edge around. Let's have a look. That's more like it. Now I'm going to decide where I want my knot. I think I want it off to one side a bit, so I'm just going to pull it over that way. I'm going to trim off the ends at an angle. And this charm is how I can tell that these are my ribbon scissors, because my other scissors have got a different charm on them. Okay, so yeah, that's alright. Might need to adjust the height just a little bit, and that's fine as well, just so that it's looking how I want it to look, which is, yeah, okay, reasonably happy with that. Might shove that knot along a little bit. Yeah. And I've got my happy birthday sentiment, and I don't think I put the top back on my adhesive properly. Just little spots here and there just to hold it down. My other way of doing this is to put the glue on the back of my hand and just kind of dab it in. I have tried, before anybody says why don't you try putting it on a sponge and dabbing it on a sponge, I have tried that. It didn't end well. I'm obviously not the kind of crafter that can do those kind of techniques. So yeah, I know my limitations. I don't know why I'm putting the top back on that. I'm going to use it again in a second. Here's my cloth, paper towel. You get my drift, yeah? And that pattern actually looks very much like a poster I had on my wall when I was a teenager. And if there's some bits where it's not sticking down properly, well, just get a little bit of adhesive and tuck it underneath. Okay, so now all I have to do is to apply this to my mat. And again, using my favourite liquid adhesive, you use adhesive of your choice. Okay, snail would be fine for this, I think, because you're just attaching a layer onto a layer. It's not kind of taking any sort of structural weight. So there it is. There is my finished card. Now when I started off, I was just going to have the whole background and just this bit of ribbon along the bottom, but when I tried it, it did actually look a little bit bare. It looked a bit unfinished, so I've just kind of die cut my sentiment. Now if you like this kind of effect, and it does take a little bit of a time to achieve, then you could do a larger piece in one session, and then just chop it down into bite-sized pieces as and when you needed them. But I do hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have, click that like button and leave me a comment. Why not? Be a devil. But for now, thank you very much for joining me. and I hope you'll come back and see me again soon. Bye bye.